I get asked all the time by up and coming wedding photographers and videographers, what's the best camera that I can buy that's not going to break my bank? Hi, I'm Travis Monroe of Monroe Film and Photo, and today I'm here to discuss my 1-year review of the camera I recommend to people, the Sony A6700. Now, full disclosure, Sony has not paid me in any sort of way to promote this camera or do anything like that. This is me personally. I bought this with my own money. I've personally been using it for a year. No one has influenced me on anything about it. This is all coming from my own personal experience. Now, little background history on the 6700. It is an APS-C formatted camera, so it is a smaller sensor. It's the continuation from Sony's previous model, the A6500, which back in the time, which was about 5-6 years ago when it came out, it was touted as one of the best hybrid cameras out there. I purchased one of these cameras, and while I did enjoy using the camera, the image quality definitely left a lot to be desired compared to the full frame models that were out there. It was a great BC camera. It worked in a pinch if you needed it for photo and video. However, it was not something that I would tell people, go buy it, you're not going to regret it, because at the end of the day, you still needed a full frame camera. However, come last year, when they came out with the A6700, I was super stoked to get my hands on it to see what improvements that they made to it compared to the 6500. So first, let's talk about some of the changes that they made on the body. The biggest change that they made to it that I 100% I don't know how they could have not had this before, is that they improved the depth of the handle here on the grip. So now I can put my whole hand around there. I tend to actually kind of shoot with my pinky hanging off a little bit just because I got a little bit bigger hands. But I love just carrying this camera around. It's super easy to use on photo and video in that regard, because now I have a nice solid firm grip on it. Whereas the other one, it was a little smaller, it was a little harder to hang. A lot of times I would even just kind of hold on to it with like one finger because I couldn't get everything else around there. So with this one, for the fact that I can get my whole hand on it, that alone was a huge difference in both photo and video and how I shoot. So that was a great improvement. The other thing that I really liked about this camera as far as the improvements is the button layout, specifically how they move some of the dials around and things like that. They made a lot of changes so that it's a lot easier to use. And as you're shooting, you don't have to think about it as much. You just know where the buttons are. It just feels a lot more natural. It also got the flippy screen as well, which everyone loves. It's not the full-on flippy screen that Sony has in some of their higher-end cameras, but still you can move it around and stuff and you can get it out of the way. That is great. Finally, the other big improvement that they made on it that I really liked is that the body itself does not overheat, at least nearly as much as the 6500. On a video perspective for the 6500, if I had that thing out in bright daylight on a wedding day, I had to really keep an eye on things. And after about 20 minutes, it was all but certain that it was probably going to overheat. There's very few scenarios that I can think of that I could trust it. So it was one of those things where I always just had to kind of keep my eye on it just to make sure that it was going to hold up throughout a ceremony. I have yet to overheat this thing in both photo and video. And I have shot stuff for an hour long, things like that. I haven't shot it at its highest settings, which is really what puts it through its paces. So I can't guarantee that this thing just won't overheat on you. But personally, with how I've been using it, which is a solid B cam for video as well as a B cam for photo, it has been amazing and it fills that buck easily for me. And I really think that should I use this as my main camera for video, it would still hold up pretty well. And I think that's primarily because the other big change is they improved the batteries, and now it uses the same batteries that all the full frames use. So I think because of that, it helped allow them to get a little bit more breathability in here. It doesn't heat up nearly as much. And then when you do the little things like flip out the screen and open up some vents and things like that, really, I don't think you're going to have much of an issue. So as far as the improvements that they made just with the body alone, it is a fantastic camera. Now, on the photo side of things, this camera is an amazing photo camera as well. It's got a 26 megapixel sensor in there now, so the images still look great. However, do they hold up in a totally 100% professional setting and you compare it to other professional cameras? It is a lot better quality than that 6500 was. So it's one of those things where, it just depends on how you're using the camera. If you are thinking more of natural light, portraits and things like that, great camera, you're going to love it. You're not going to notice a big difference. However, at least in a wedding scenario, if you're doing dances with this and you're not using flash, that's when you're really going to see the grain appear and your image is kind of starting to fall apart. So that's where low light, you definitely want to be using flash. Daylight, you're still going to be happy with it. So photo side, it's definitely an improvement. However, it's probably not up to snuff to be an A cam on the photo side of things. Now, let's talk about the video quality in the 6700. I have been super, super happy with the video quality that's been coming out of this thing. It is amazing. It looks great when you're in those perfect lighting conditions, holding it up to my A7S III or the A7 IV, which I love as well. That's the ultimate hybrid camera. This thing looks amazing right next to them. I have no problems going back and forth, and you can't tell a difference. I couldn't say that about the 6500. Anytime you cut to that angle, you knew it was a lower quality image. Even though it still looked good, you could just tell the little things. The only thing that this falls apart on is in low light, and it doesn't really fall apart compared to the 6500. In fact, what I would make it more comparable to, at least what it reminds me in an edit, is the A7S II. When that came out years ago, was considered the low light king. It still does look a little darker. The image does fall apart just a little bit, but I'm not throwing on denoise nearly as much as I used to. Whereas with the A6500, it was a guarantee. Any sort of low light, it's like, all right, now I have to denoise this, and then your results were going to vary. Video looked kind of mushy on it, so it was never one that I really was happy about, and I was excited just to even replace that camera in my kit. The other thing they improved on the video side of things is that you now have 10-bit video, and this is amazing. This was the thing that was missing out of all those other full frames with the A7S II and the A7 III. While they were amazing cameras for their time, that 8-bit video made it really tough to edit, and you really had to nail everything right in camera. Otherwise, as soon as you start manipulating it, the image would fall apart. You couldn't get the colors right, different things like that. With the 6700 and that 10-bit, that's not nearly an issue. I see all the time where I get some footage that looks too yellow or something like that. Just a little quick movement of the dial on my color correction, and boom, I have it looking amazing. So by having that 10-bit in this little camera and having that flexibility in post, that right there is a major, major selling point for me. So after 1 year of shooting with the Sony A6700 in both photo and video, would I recommend this as your first camera to purchase, your go-to, the ultimate thing to get if you're just getting started in this industry? And I would honestly say, yeah, I think it's a great bang for the buck. For about $1,400 brand new, it's great. You probably can get it used now too, maybe around $1,200 or something like that at this time, since it's been out for a little while. And if you're looking for the ultimate lens to pair with it and to keep it under $2,000, I highly recommend looking at the 18-105 f4G lens for the APS-C lineup. It's a great overall lens. It's very similar to its big brother that I keep on the full frame at all time, which is 24-105. This is 18-105, so you get a little bit more of that range there. You do have a zoom feature on it. It doesn't have built-in stabilization, so there's some pros and cons to it. However, the glass is super sharp. I really like the range of this lens. I don't have to think much about trying to swap lenses all the time and things like that. It just pretty much lives on this camera, and I don't touch it, and it's great, and I'm never disappointed with the results that I get from it. So there you have it, folks, our 1-year review of the Sony A6700. What are your thoughts of this camera? Have you guys used it, and do you feel it's the same way that I do, or do you think that maybe there's some more issues with this camera that I'm not pointing out? Please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for tuning in.